Hi guys, this is Alex Costa of A&R Design, and this is our part 2 follow-up video on the Staccato XC pistol. Last fall, we released a video review of the Staccato XC. It was a borrowed gun from a good friend of mine, Tim, at ET Gear Co. They're out of Taylor, Texas. They sell night vision and soldier systems equipment, so we thank them for the original lending of their pistol for us to do the original video on. But because of getting to do a review on that pistol, I fell in love with the pistol and I needed one for myself. So I picked up a Staccato XC. I waited quite a while for the gun. When I got it, kind of a game changer for me. I've made some major changes to the firearm to suit me better. So changes that I've made so far are the grip. I have the new generation 17 length grip that I run in the wintertime. Right now I actually have a Staccato C2 grip, which is their compact carry double stack grip on the gun. It sits more at a Glock 19 length grip length, and it's because I'm carrying this gun in the summer. I'm wearing a cut off t-shirt. I can still conceal carry this gun very well. It's a long gun, it's a very heavy gun, but because of the length of the slide and the shortness of the grip in this combination, the length of the gun is essentially a keel of a ship when it's in my pants, and it keeps the gun vertical, tight to the body and whatnot. A couple changes though. I did not like the original factory stipple that came with the gun. So I have a Staccato P to show you. It's got all those little triangle arrowhead looking things. I used a wood chisel to remove them all from the C2 grip, and then I used a wood burner and then a butane torch to smooth it out afterwards. But I like the borders that they already have on these grips. I just don't like the actual grip texturing. When I first got the gun, it came with that grip texturing. I was able to acquire one of the new grips that came out this year after SHOT Show. So this was the grip that I ran all year long before I got the Staccato, before summer. And then I started running the C2 grip. You'll also notice I'm not using a Staccato factory trigger. The Staccato factory trigger is an injection molded trigger over the trigger bow, and it sits really far in the back of the trigger guard. Now, I mean, that's great if you run gloves or something like that and you need all that extra room to get your finger in there. But for me, with my large hands, it's not the right length of pull from my index finger to the back of my hand. So I also made a change there. I am running the Atlas trigger. This is a drop-in with adjustable length of pull. When I first dropped it into the gun with the original factory frame, it dropped in no problem. I didn't have to adjust anything. I didn't have to file anything or tune anything. It dropped right in, I was good to go. When I switched over to the newer grips, same deal. As it sits here on the table, the trigger dropped in just fine and had no interferences or resistance. The C2 grip, on the other hand, did. I had to use some micro files and some diamond files to open it up a little bit to get the trigger in. And I also realized it was a little squatted towards the back strap. So once I mounted it onto the frame of the pistol, it widened the grip up and the trigger slid in more effectively. Once I put the C2 grip on the actual serialized frame of the gun, it kind of spread it out a little bit and the trigger was fully operational. But I did have to remove a lot of material. So I'm also not carrying this gun with a Magwell. I don't really see the huge purpose of the factory Magwells. I bought an extra skinnier grip pin off their website so that I could carry it without a Magwell. Here's my factory Magwell removed. I'm gonna put this down and we'll just use this as a prop. The entrance orifice of the actual polymer grip is pretty wide. And you can see with how narrow these Staccato mags are, you have a lot of open surface area to access and dump your mag in. And because it's tapered and so skinny, it's really easy to get your mags in there and to run them fast. I like the polymer grip because they have some really nice geometry in here, which makes it really easy to chase the mag into the polymer grip. Now, the factory Magwell, they did a nice job where the front of the Magwell, where it blends into the polymer, factory injection molded Magwell, is really, really smooth. And the same goes for the back. It's like a nice curve leading into the radius, into the Magwell. This is nice, it's a nice feature. The flares on the side don't really help as much. They don't really follow the factory curve of the inside of the Magwell, and they're kind of a moot point for reload's sake. But, you know, the Magwell is a nice touch if it's a, you know, a duty gun on your hip or a range gun explicitly, but because I carry this gun inside the waist, I needed to remove the Magwell for better concealment, and I haven't had any issues with reloads without the Magwell. I don't think it's that necessary for someone that's efficient at reloading mags, and even moving and shooting, I think the Magwell, the injection molded Magwell, is extremely sufficient for what it is. So we'll go talk about triggers. The injection molded trigger on these is for a $4,200 gun is a little cheap. I mean, the trigger that I put in there from Atlas was only $42, and it's a huge step in the right direction for me. So I took some measurements from the factory grip, from the inside of the trigger guard to the front of the trigger face. The factory trigger comes in at 0.4395 inches. Well, I needed a longer length of pull, so I have this one and it's dialed into about 0.597 inches. So that's a pretty big jump in length of pull. And the reason being is when I'm running the factory grip, factory trigger, to get that correct trigger finger placement that I like, which is the soft spot, right where the soft spot of your finger pad meets the bone, so you're getting more consistent press, I'm almost like hooking the trigger. And some people say hooking the trigger is bad. Well, not necessarily, depends on your hands. But I did notice that sometimes I get trigger lock, or I wouldn't run the trigger that well because it's too close, it's too squatted. I'm really hooked doing that on there. It's not terrible, I'm still good at shooting it, but I knew that if I could adjust my length of pull, I would get a more positive trigger press, probably run the gun faster. So with the Atlas trigger all the way extended so that there's no windowed void behind the trigger, my finger is more in the normal trigger position for my trigger press, and because it's got such a short length of travel, I don't really have any issues with this, and I found my performance with the firearm increased with having it fit for my hands. So super happy about that. This trigger's pretty awesome. I like the flat face trigger as well, and it has been a huge improvement. I'm carrying this with the X300 pistol light. It's a little bit longer than the dust cover here because the compensator blasts all the pressure up. I have no carbon aggregate on the lens of my pistol light. So that's another fantastic benefit to having this vertical compensator. This gun's really expensive, $4,200 versus, I believe these are like $23.99. So is it worth the almost $2,000 price tag? Is it worth the almost $2,000 price tag? That's up to you. Because we're an FFL, I could get this at dealer cost. It was more like $3,300, so that made sense for me to purchase this gun because it was more affordable than sticker. So I really like the compensator. It's my favorite compensator, but they are charging, you know, $1,800 increase for a slightly different machine slide and a solid piece of bar stock that they machine into the barrel compensator. Tim's gun that I did in the first review, he had a lot of polishing of the barrel here. It seems like his barrel and slide lockup had a lot of interferences, and he mentioned that he had some issues with the gun when he first got it. I too had some issues with this gun when I first got it. These guns do have a break-in period. It was about 800 rounds through this gun before it really started to shine. The first 250 rounds, I was running it with the factory 7-pound or 7.5-pound spring that comes with it with 115 grain. I started noticing the slide getting very sluggish. I was getting failure to feeds. I even had the slide stop on the mag from picking a round up. you know, I was a little frustrated. So I talked to some friends that are Staccato lovers. They told me to run 8-pound springs with 124 grain. So I switched over to 124 grain. I threw the 8-pound spring in there, and I started to have that very positive return of the slide. The pressure from the 124 grain was more effective of keeping the muzzle down using the compensator. And all in all, it felt like a much faster, smoother, and easier to manage pistol with the 124 with the 8-pound spring. Now, if you run like 147 grain plus P ammo, do not run that with the factory spring. Do not run it with an 8-pound spring. Make sure you upgrade to the 12 or 14-pound springs. I did run 147 through this, some carry ammo that I had, Spear Gold Dot, through this gun when I first got it, and on a blown out 7-pound spring, there was so much shock to the system that both my 509T Optic and my Surefire X300 ceased to work. It like broke solder on the control boards. It fucked them up. So you have to make sure that you test your ammo, test the springs, check your ejection. Is it weak ejection? Is it positive ejection? 124 with an 8-pound spring, I'm getting about 3-foot ejection, very consistent. I can shoot 1,000 rounds standing in one spot, and it's a neat little pile. Once the 8-pound springs start to soften up, I can run 115 grains if I want. It's a weaker ejection, but I'm not having any issues anymore. So once the gun smooths out, it's really, really nice. These guns like it wet, so don't be hesitant to soak this thing in gun lube when you first get it to help through the break-in process. Don't use grease. If you grease some of the high points, it gets a little too gummy. Everything is really tight fit in this gun. I mean, the slide is locked to the rear right now, and I cannot wiggle the slider frame whatsoever. So the fitment is nice. For a $4,200 gun though, I wish there was a little bit better compensator to slide blending, and I wish there was less interferences between the barrel, the slide, and the recoil spring assembly. Dawson makes their really unique self-capturing recoil spring assembly. It makes the gun very easy to take down compared to standard 1911s, but I did notice that I had circumferential wear on the sleeve of the recoil spring assembly when I first started breaking this gun in, and I believe there were some burrs inside where the sleeve sits inside the bottom of the compensator within the dust cover. So I believe that might have attributed to some of my malfunctions in the beginning, but you know, just persevere, push through, run the guns hard, get them dirty, get them nasty, lube them, and let that carbon kind of polish those surfaces and those interferences, and it turns into like the nicest shooter ever. So I really, really love this gun. I carry this concealed every day with our CNC cut quick ship appendix with claw for the X300. I originally had the SRO on this, but I noticed because of the way this gun is built, the SRO is riding my belt and tipping the gun towards the belt. And we build our holsters specifically so that you have a really good master grip on the gun. So recently, Neomag came out with the Alias belt clip system. So I have a receiver on my Blue Alpha Gear belt, so I run a proper gun belt. The receiver slides on, it keeps the gun perfectly vertical all the time. There's no tip or twist on the belt. This T-post goes right into the receiver, and it keeps it very vertical on the belt and very consistent. So this is my preferred carry with this system. I mean, I really love the C2 grip. It's kind of bobbed in the back. After I did my stipple job and I removed some material, it kind of slimmed the grip down. It's very concealable in this configuration. I'm running the 509T X2, which you can also get on our website, as well as the X300 and the holster, and we have some deep concealment mag carriers for this gun. I'm running this 509T X2 because I like the enclosed emitter. Because this is in my pants, you know, getting lint and other stuff on it, it's easier to wipe the window without having to stick my finger into an RMR or SRO and clean it out. I can just simply casually wipe it a couple times a day while it's in my pants discreetly. Don't have to worry about the window getting all gunked up. Jay Pedro over at Ridgeline Defense did have a qualm about enclosed emitters on pistols. Said that sometimes if you have background glare when you're running on night vision, it can affect your night vision. But I guess the same would work for, you know, aim point T2s or whatever when you're running them, on a rifle, you'd have the same experience. So some people that do run a lot of night vision don't like the flat face of a rear enclosed emitter, but again, that's situational. So this gun's great. If you do buy a Staccato, make sure you buy lots of recoil springs. I usually swap my springs out every 5,000 rounds now that the gun's broken in, but the springs do wear out, they shorten up a bit, and to keep your gun consistent, you need to change your springs. Because I'm running the 124 grain and the 8-pound springs, I'm running these Barnes 115 grain hollow points as my defensive carry. They run really nice out of the gun. Make sure you test your carry gun with the springs that you're using. If you want to carry a heavier bullet, higher pressure round, maybe buy yourself a secondary backup recoil spring assembly so that you can keep it captured and compressed. You can throw it into the gun if you know, in training 124 grain 8-pound. Well, you're gonna carry 147 plus P. Keep an extra recoil spring assembly ready to go so you can just swap them real fast, drop a new mag in with your ammo if you want to choose that course of action. But make sure you test your ammo and test your springs for the correct ejection so that you're not beating your gun to death. The whole point of these guns, regardless of compensator or not, is their return to zero. Staccatos and 2011s and 1911s alike have a very consistent return to zero. If you're running the correct ammo, the correct spring weights, you're gonna have a very consistent gun. Every time you press that trigger, that dot is gonna drop right back to where you left it. So that is the one thing I've noticed with these guns. They have insane return to zero. They're already soft shooters, but the return to zero is really the key point. There's a lot of people out there that complain about bore axis, like height over bore, recoil, all this stuff. Well, you can have a gun that recoils quite a bit, but if the return to zero is very consistent, that's still a really good gun. So like the Walther PDPs, the 509s, they're a little bit snappier on the shot, but they have a very consistent return to zero, and a lot of people forget that. A lot of people complain, but my recoil. Well, you have to always look at the bigger picture, and return to zero is super important. It helps you get those follow-up shots faster and where you left the dot. A lot of questions have been asked. Well, I run the X300. Can't push down with this finger. So I'm running the Emissary Development extended paddle for this gun, or for this light. It's a neat little paddle. It fits in our holsters. People have asked, do they fit our holsters? They sure do. It's kind of a neat little mod. So when you're running your gun, you can get to your light switch better. So I do like that. But if you ever have to shoot, I guess you wouldn't have to shoot left-handed, but you can't go the other way with those switches. They can only rotate one way. But I am running that on the light. I haven't had any white NDs through the holster, and they fit our holsters really well. So that's another little accessory on the gun. There's no texturing on the magazine release, which is totally fine with me. It's a very easy to get to magazine release. One thing that I did have to train out with this gun, I'm fine with safety, single action only guns. I'm fine with dropping the safety. The one thing I did have to train out from going from standard striker fired polymer guns that have slide releases in a very accessible area, because of where this slide release is and how big the safety is, it's kind of hard to get to the slide release without having to change your grip quite a bit. So when I did transition over to carrying this gun exclusively, I bring that hand up and I swipe it with my thumb as I reload and drop the slide. I like that. It's nice to learn a new skill, to try something different, and I kind of prefer that now because my grip never changes, so I'm always swiping it with my support side hand, and it doesn't slow me down at all. You can get some really fast reloads, you know, if you don't do that, but I feel like I'm still consistent because I'm dropping that slide as I bring the gun up. So that was the one thing I had to learn and train out of my reloads from going from the standard easy to access slide stops to this one. But that's about it. The gun is absolutely insane to shoot. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you liked the video. Please like, subscribe, and follow up in the comments section. Check out the description of this video. We have a bunch of links to our website. We have a really nice blog on our website and all kinds of other resources to firearms knowledge, holsters, and check out our equipment on our website. Thanks a lot.